Starting off at number 10 now, we have leave. This one comes from a Reddit user who owes his life to a stranger or some supernatural force. See what you guys think. They say, I was stationed in Seoul, South Korea several years ago. I was taking a shower in my room, and when I got out, the word leave was written in small letters in the fog on the bathroom mirror. I don't have a roommate because we get our own private rooms there. A little freaked out, I decided to do exactly that. I left. I went off for some Korean barbecue and wandered the city a bit. I came back a couple of hours later to find the barracks were evacuated and half burnt to the ground. The fire was pinpointed to faulty electrical wiring that caught some insulation on fire inside the walls. Someone or something knew that was going to happen, and to this day, whatever that something was, it didn't want me in the middle of it. I gladly thank who or whatever it is if they give me the chance, but it's been years and I still have no idea. Moving on to number 9 now, we have the figure. When you're a kid and you get creeped out at night, your parents may tell you it's just your imagination. But what if you found out that you were right the whole time? Reddit user Miss Awesomeness said, when I was a kid between 8 or 9, I used to wake up every night to headlights coming through my bedroom window. The lights would then stop and turn off, not as if a car drove by, but as if they were turned off. Then the long shadows of a man, as if he were looking through my window, would pass by and stop right in front of the window. I would lay really still and pretend nothing happened every night for months. Eventually I convinced myself it was my imagination. Now that I think back, it stopped when my stepdad moved in, but I was convinced it wasn't real. Across the street lived my best friend, whose mom was also single, and she refused to sleep in her bedroom. Her window faced my window. She told me years later it was because every night a man would park on her side yard and walk over to my yard. The long shadows were from the light in her yard. She eventually decided it was my dad checking in on us and never told me until I was a teenager. It wasn't my dad, I know that because I asked him, so I thought I was crazy and hallucinating for years, or perhaps I wasn't and two kids were having odd dreams at the same time every night. Coming out number 8 now, we have The Room. This one comes from a Reddit user who said, I work in hospice, I spend a lot of time around dying people. About a month and a half ago, one of my longer term clients was actively passing. Now that can involve hallucinating, seeing and talking to people who aren't actually there. It happens a lot. There's nothing wrong with it. It's the dying person's brain trying to grasp with their new reality. So I work overnights. My client was wide awake, talking to people who were in the room with her but who weren't in the room with me, which was fine. I'm okay with that. Until she started describing people I knew who had passed. I almost quit my job that night and told myself I wouldn't return to her. Most of the rest of her hospice care team started quitting in the next few days, and I ended up staying with her until the very end. That one weird night was the only time she was talking to my dead family members. I'm still kind of messed up over it. Next up, number 7 now, we have The Creature. Do you guys believe in Bigfoot? We've talked about that a lot in urban legend videos. Is this story related to that? Reddit user The Glitter Band said, I get insomnia. It was one of those nights and I was sitting out on my back porch at about 4 AM smoking a cigarette. It was one of these eerie nights where there is absolutely no breeze and it's just completely quiet out. We have woods behind our house, and as I was sitting there, I see this person making his way through the canopy of the trees, like jumping from tree to tree, 30 or 40 feet up in the air. I was absolutely stunned and just sat there, dumbly too afraid and confused to even get up and run inside the house. This person or thing or whatever it was stopped directly behind my house and looked at me. At this point it's about 50 feet away and maybe 40 feet up in the air. It pauses for about 5 seconds staring in my direction. I'm absolutely certain that it wasn't an animal. Its body was human shaped and it definitely wasn't a raccoon, bear or any of the other things people might have suggested it was. But the way it was moving through the trees definitely was not human. No human, I don't care how fit they are, could move like that. It was too dark to make out that much detail of the face, clothing or anything like that. After about 5 seconds of looking at me, it turns away and takes off the same way it had been going before, just leaping from tree to tree at a fast pace. Within a few more seconds, it was out of sight. Moving on to number 6 now, we have True or False. This one comes from Reddit user The Ambush Bug. I'm going to jump right into it and we'll discuss it after. They said, in 4th or 5th grade, we stopped all of our classes for the day. 2 people came into our classroom, a man and a woman, and they didn't say why they were there there or where they had come from. They handed out questionnaire booklets that seemed like standardized tests, except for the questions within them. 50 or so questions, all of them true or false format, but with really weird content. Some that I can remember were true or false, worms talk to trucks, and true or false, apples are blue. We all answered them while looking really confused, and our teachers were silent the entire time. The next day, nobody said a word about the test. I remember asking people what they were, but nobody could recall where the people were from. We never saw them again, and no faculty of the school ever once mentioned a test. We didn't have them the next year and had never had them before. I still have no clue what they wanted from us. Alright, what is going on there, guys? That sounds like something out of a movie. Like some sort of creepy CIA stuff. Moving on to number 5 now, we have teleportation. Do you guys believe that teleportation can happen? This story makes it sound like you just have to believe really hard to make it happen. Reddit user Evangelina1021 said, I always remember this and do not have an explanation for it. When I was about 4 or 5 years old, I remember waking up in the middle of the night and walking to the stairs. I remember closing my eyes for a second at the top of the stairs, and when I opened them, I would be at the bottom of the stairs. I would run upstairs and close my eyes, and the same thing would happen again. It happened at least 4 or 5 times until my parents called me to go to bed because they could hear me run up the stairs. It's weird because I was totally wide awake and do not have a history with sleepwalking. I still think about it and wonder how that was possible. Next up at number 4 now, we have the boats. This one comes from Reddit user Risa, and if you can solve this mystery, guys, there's a massive monetary reward for you at the end of it. I'm serious, you're about to see why. They said, my uncle never had a chance to meet him, hired a small yacht with a small group of friends and were going to use it to do sailing holidays as a business. Anyway, they radioed in very early one morning saying they were out of petrol off the coast and were told they would receive petrol in the morning. They went to deliver petrol and never found the boat. They have only ever found one life donut ring, and that's it. They think the boat was pirated, and we have reports that they're still alive in different countries, but they've never been substantiated. They also have a sneaking suspicion that the yacht owner had something to do with it, as he acted so dodgy after it all went down. They literally have absolutely no idea what happened. There were no other ships in the area at the time. They thought they could have been run over and sank by a larger ship. Anyway, it's called the Patanela. There is still a huge reward out for any info. Coming in number 3 now, we have pizza time. This one comes from Reddit user Math the username, who said, I was 18 and my brother Chris was 16. I also have a brother James who was 5 at the time. We had just moved into an older house that used to be 3 apartments. We just about finished unpacking and we designated rooms. James's room was directly above the living room with a staircase. James went up to discover his new room, and Chris and I took a short walk around the neighborhood. We got back and were sitting in the living room just talking. My mom says she's going to get pizza for dinner and leaves. She took a fairly long time, which is normal for her. I think she really enjoys the small breaks she gets when she can leave the house without James, and I never object to babysitting. Besides, James is plenty occupied with his new room. Chris and I are just talking in the living room. James is super excited about his new room. We hear him running and stomping around upstairs, opening and closing doors. Sometimes he slams the doors pretty hard, but whatever, he is a kid. I assumed he fell asleep since the noise stopped eventually. I hear my mom's car pull up. I get up to meet her in the kitchen. My mom comes in carrying soda. James follows directly behind her carrying the food, yelling pizza time. She took him with her to get dinner. Chris and I just looked at each other, taking way too long to comprehend what was happening and what was making that noise upstairs. Next up at number 2 now, we have John. This one is just straight up creepy. If they are telling the truth about the details of this story, then I have no idea what the explanation is. Reddit user CatGib13 said, when my son was about 2 or 3, he wouldn't go to sleep, so I let him in my bed. My husband was asleep, so I told my boy he had to look at his books quietly when I read mine. He was good for a bit, but then he started reading the book, actually reading the words out loud, slowly. Now he couldn't read, and it was never a book we had read to him yet. It wasn't memorization. I asked him how he knew what it said, and he replied, my friend John is telling me. He talked to John whenever he played. He divided his Matchbox cars into 2 piles and talked to his friend. He also claimed he lived in his nursery closet. At age 4, we moved him into his big boy room, and now that he's 16, he refuses to even step into the nursery. He hasn't been in there since we moved him out. When I ask why, he says he doesn't know, but it gives him the creeps and the hairs on his arm stand up even thinking about it. That doesn't bother anyone else. I don't actually know what the explanation for that story is. Maybe the kid could read better better than they thought, or maybe the spirit of a dead man called John was reading out loud to him at night. I hope it's the first one. And finally, number 1 now, we have Ernie. Do any of you guys have those toys that talk when you like press a button on them or move in front of them? Did you ever think they could be creepy? Well, you're about to, after this story from Reddit user LXNXB. They said, when I was a kid, I had lots and lots of plushies. One of them was a talking Ernie doll from Sesame Street that wasn't functioning properly. You had to absolutely bang it on a table for it to say, I feel great. Our old house in my home country was housed with spirits, but not bad ones, or at least that's what my parents said. I never witnessed or felt anything until this one time. When I was 8, I overheard my parents saying something along the lines that my Ernie plushie spoke every time they talked about my grandma. I got irrationally scared, which made my parents hide Ernie in a huge box along with my other unused plushies. One time, when I was playing hide and seek, I was hiding with my childhood friend Jay in our spare room where the box of plushies were. While we were hiding, I figured I might as well tell him the story about the haunted Ernie doll and my just recently passed away grandma. In the middle of the story, we hear Ernie say, I feel great, in the box on top of the shelf. There's no way that was moved. And even if it was somehow moved by gravity, you need to bang Ernie on the table to even make it talk. We screamed and ran outside.
Starting us off at number 10 is The Exorcist. I would be doing an injustice if I didn't start with one of the scariest movies of all time. And why was it the scariest movie of all time? Because it was one of the scariest books of all time. Written by William Peter Blatty and published in 1971, the book takes place in Washington DC and follows demonically possessed 12-year-old Reagan McNeil, who is also the daughter of a very famous actress. The duo are in Georgetown whilst the mother is filming when Reagan becomes sick. Weird things start happening around the house, which her mother tries to find rational explanations for, and Reagan's condition intensifies and deteriorates. Nothing helps her until the mother gives in and turns to a priest for help. A pair of priests spend the whole book trying to exorcise the demon, and it was actually based off of a real case of possession William heard about in the 50s. I don't want to go into more detail and include spoilers because if you haven't read it, you definitely should. I feel like scary books scare you in a way that movies just can't. When I used to read them at home alone, I physically could not continue reading because I was scared. I was scared of reading. Like, that is a real fear, people. Coming in at number 9 is Blindness. Written by Jose Saramago and published in 1995, the book follows an unnamed city or country that's been afflicted with an unexplainable epidemic of blindness. And since most people there go blind, a social and economic breakdown soon follows. The plot involves a group of unnamed characters, and the book is written in really long sentences, and there are no speech marks around the dialogue, so you're also like, wait, who's speaking right now? The first half of the book takes place in a dirty, overcrowded asylum where the group and countless other blind people have been quarantined. And the whole thing descends into anarchy basically. People are worried about the availability of food, necessities, no medicines are allowed inside, so even a small infection could end up deadly. Gangs start forming, they start raping women in exchange for giving them food. It just gets really, really bad. The only person in the land that doesn't get infected was the doctor's wife, and we follow how she has to try and help the group survive. At number 8 we have The Haunting of Hill House. It's not a horror if a haunted house isn't on this list, am I right? Written by Shirley Jackson and published in 1959, the book has been dubbed one of the best literary ghost stories in the 20th century. It went on to become 2 films, a play, and the basis of a Netflix series, so it's safe to say even in the 21st century we are getting a lot of inspiration from it. Shirley even drew the floor plans of the house and its outside before beginning the novel. The plot takes place in a mansion called Hill House and follows 4 main characters: an investigator of the supernatural, Eleanor, a shy girl, and a disabled mother, Theodora, and the mansion's heir, Luke. They all come to the house because of having experienced something paranormal or wanting to investigate the paranormal. The house itself has been the site of many deaths and suicides, and as their stay progresses, creepy things start happening, as they always do. The house itself seems sentient and angry, but the best part of the book is the narrator. We trust Eleanor from the start because she seems quite reliable and sweet, but as the book progresses she becomes more and more unreliable, she starts descending into madness, and then it gets confusing on whether the things happening in the house are really happening or she's just seeing things or hallucinating them. I'm just gonna leave it at that. Filling our number 7 slot is The Silence of the Lambs. I don't know how I could have made this list and not included Hannibal Lecter. Written by Thomas Harris and published in 1988, the book is actually a sequel about the forensic psychiatrist and cannibalistic serial killer Dr. Hannibal Lecter. First of all, has anyone seen the show Hannibal? I watched the first season. I could literally only watch one episode a day, not even binge it, because it was just too taxing watching such screwed up things happen for so long. Like I used to have to mentally prepare before watching it. But anyway, at this point Hannibal is already in jail, so the plot follows an FBI trainee called Clarice who is given the task of drawing up psychological profiles of serial killers starting with Hannibal. Well, that's what she's told, but her real mission that she doesn't know about is to try and get Hannibal's help identifying a new serial killer on the loose dubbed Buffalo Bill. The plot follows her periodically visiting Hannibal and probing him about the killer. He gives her cryptic clues in exchange for knowing about her disturbing childhood as an orphan. This book won 2 awards for Best Novel and it's a literary gem. I haven't met anyone who hasn't heard of The Silence of the Lambs. Like, they won't even know what it is, but they would have heard of it for sure. Now at number 6 is Carrion Comfort. Written by Dan Simmons and published in 1989, it won the Locust Poll Award for Best Horror Novel, the Bram Stoker Award, and the August Derleth Award for Best Novel. Stephen King even calls it one of the greatest horror novels of the 20th century, so based on that, I reckon it's a pretty good book. The book focuses on a fraction of humanity who has intense psychic powers called the Ability. These people can control someone from a distance, and I mean control them, like physically too, as in they could make someone commit murder if they really wanted to. Killing someone indirectly gives the Ability users energy and youth, so they're almost like pseudo-vampires. The book sets up the fact the abilities have been used throughout time, whether that's fake charisma of a world leader, everyday murders, or the Holocaust. Although it's split into many timelines, it mostly follows a group of immoral people in the 80s, some of which want to take over the world. Investigators pursue a series of murders and realize these people really need to be stopped. It's honestly brutal. They get together in one scene and talk about all the people they killed, including John Lennon, and then later on 2 of them end up fighting but use normal humans around them as soldiers to fight each other. It's screwed up, but isn't every book on this list? Coming in at number 5 is A Head Full of Ghosts. Written by Paul G. Tremblay and published in 2015, the book follows an American family that's troubled. The dad is unemployed, they barely have any money, and then things get even worse due to the mental illness of their 14-year-old daughter, Marjorie. The book is told from the perspective of Marjorie's 8-year-old sister, Mary, and it starts when Marjorie starts telling Mary macabre stories instead of innocent Dr. Seuss ones. Welcome to the real world, Mary. Anyway, the dad, who is a born-again Catholic, decides Marjorie doesn't have a mental illness, she's demonically possessed, 2 very different things, and so he gets the help of his priest to try and exorcise her. And let's just say Marjorie is not really telling the truth. I'll leave it at that. At number 4 is Let the Right One In. Written by John Lindquist and published in English in 2008, the book is essentially a vampire story, but it's not like Twilight, before you guys just skip number 4. And for the record, I just like to say I read all the Twilight books and the books were actually really good. Please do not base the series on Kristen Stewart's acting, thank you. But anyway, the plot follows a 12-year-old boy called Oscar, a vampire child called Eli, and its caretaker Hakan. The story takes place in Stockholm in the 80s and focuses on a plethora of disturbing things like pedophilia, self-mutilation, murder, bullying, genital mutilation, etc. Oscar becomes friends with Eli when it moves in next door, and he finds out Eli was turned into a vampire when they were a child and hence forever remains in a young body and mind. Hakan, Eli's caretaker, was a former teacher who got caught with child pornography, and as you can imagine, he's very much in love with Eli and goes out and kills people and gets blood for them in order to sustain them in exchange for money. Even though Hakan would do it for free if Eli would let them be physically intimate, but we all know that's not gonna happen. The story goes on when Hakan gets caught on his last blood-procuring mission, and things just get worse and worse from there. Death, murder, acid throwing, blood drinking, the book has it all, and it was adapted into 2 feature films. Filling our number 3 slot is The House of Leaves, and this one is hard because half the people who've read it say it's a horror story, and the other half say it's a love story, and I mean there is horror in love and vice versa, so Can it be both? But anyway, written by Mark Danielewski and published in 2000, the book itself is incredibly confusing. It has footnotes, and those footnotes have their own footnotes. Some pages just have a few words or a line of text. Some pages you have to rotate the book so you can actually read it. Some pages words are arranged in a way that mirror the story, but basically the format of the book is meant to make you feel claustrophobic. The plot has many narratives but mostly follows a tattoo parlor employee called Johnny. Johnny's looking for a new apartment when his friend recommends a place in his building from a man who just died. When moving in, he finds an academic manuscript written by that man about a film called The Navidson Record. Except Johnny can't find any evidence of the film ever existing. The main plot focuses on the Navidson family story. The family come home from a trip one day and find that their house is expanded internally, but externally it looks exactly the same. There are more rooms, hallways upon hallways, and all of them are featureless and unlit, and there always just seems to be a low growl sound in the house. Characters start exploring the house and venture into the endless passageways, which ultimately leads to murder, insanity, and death. Now the second plot takes place in the footnotes, and it's about what's happening in Johnny's life, and it gets more and more unclear whether his obsession with the manuscript and consequent paranoia and delusions are because of madness, drug use, or the manuscript itself. The third and final mini-plot are letters woven in from Johnny's mother, who's in a psychiatric hospital. Honestly, with this book you really end up doubting your own perception of the story and what's fact and what isn't, and honestly, what more can you want from a book? Especially a horror book. Now number 2 is It, written by Stephen King, which I'm sure you all already knew, and published in 1986. It is iconic. I'm not going to go into too much detail about the book since the movies are all out as well, and regardless of whether you've seen them or not, I feel like everyone knows what it's about. The story follows a group of kids that call themselves the Losers Club. The kids realize they all encountered the same shape-shifting entity which took the form of their biggest fears. They named the thing It because they had no idea what it was. It wasn't human, it was genderless, it was it. They figure out It is behind all the child murders happening in the town, and they try to stop the evil clown. There's even a bit where Pennywise itself is narrating and telling the reader where it came from. The book is split into 2 timelines taking place 30 years apart, so we see the club as kids in the first one, and then we see them return to Derry in the second one because there's been another slew of child murders. I can't even count the amount of times people have recommended It to me and told me it genuinely scared the living hell out of them, and I still refuse to read it. I'm just not gonna do it. That's not me. And finally, at number 1 is Rosemary's Baby, written by Era 11 and published in 1967. The book sold over 4 million copies, and that made it the best-selling horror novel of the 60s. The plot follows Rosemary Woodhouse and her struggling actor husband Guy, who recently move into an old Gothic apartment building. Despite being warned about the building's strange history involving murder and witchcraft, they move in anyway. And the couple are quickly welcomed by neighbors Minnie and Roman, who Rosemary gets a weird vibe from. Due to some freak accident blinding his theatrical rival, Guy gets a great role and agrees to try for their first kid. Hurrah! But not. But that night, Rosemary has a sexual dream involving an inhuman creature, and the next day she has claw scratches all over her boobs, on her crotch, basically everywhere. And then somehow she becomes pregnant, but then falls severely ill, losing more and more weight and craving raw meat. Everything goes tits up, and I can 100% say Guy is not the father.
At number 10 we have It. Yeah, we all know what this is about, and you've seen the movies. But if you weren't spooked by the movies, then you should definitely read the book because it's way scarier. One of my buddies told me a story about how his dad was reading the book and getting so scared while he was reading the book that his mom made him stop reading it because he kept waking her up from night terrors. There are some points in the book that are so much more horrible. Like the bully in the book, Henry Bowers, is way worse in the book than he is in the movies. He is almost as evil as Pennywise himself. At one point he pins down Ben Hanscom and he carves his name into his stomach like he's carving a turkey. He also whitewashes the kid's face in snow until he starts bleeding everywhere, and he also hunts down a dog and kills it. This is all before he gets sent to jail and then escapes from jail and is even more dangerous than before. That alone is enough to make the book much more terrifying, and there's also a weird group sex scene who everyone who reads the book talks about because it's super strange. At number 9 we have the Necronomicon. This isn't just a book, but it's also a weapon. Whoa, super crazy, dude. It's a bunch of texts that have the power to summon demonic forces. It is the backbone of the horror series Evil Dead. The book summons a force that has the ability to kill and infect people with some sort of plague that turns them into slaves of the book while simultaneously rotting their bodies and making them look like bloodthirsty zombies. You can also use this book to summon demons to do your bidding, possess people, and communicate with the dead, and a whole bunch of other demonic things. Also, you read this book at your own risk. All the text is in an unknown language, and if you say the wrong thing, it might bring the end of the world. At number 8, we have The Journal of Tom Riddle. If you're a Harry Potter fan, then you know this book very well. This journal is one of the Horcruxes that is connected to Lord Voldemort. If you write in the book will write back to you, slowly corrupting you, getting into your mind and controlling you. In Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, it corrupts the mind of Ginny Weasley and gets her to open the Chamber of Secrets, which wakes up the basilisk and leaves her for dead inside the chamber. I can't think of a way a book could scar you more than taking over your mind and turning you into a mindless slave. You need to get a lot of therapy to get over that one, yeah. At number 7, we have Pet Sematary. It should be no surprise that there is more than one Stephen King book on this list. He's one of the greatest horror writers that has ever walked the earth. We gotta give him a lot of love. Pet Sematary is one of the great horror classics. You have a cat that dies and then gets buried in a supernatural cemetery. The cat comes back to life. Holy crap, that is amazing. But then the protagonist's daughter dies. They have a funeral for the poor girl, but he can't live with it. He refuses to have his daughter taken away from him. So he goes to the graveyard, digs up his daughter, and then buries her in the supernatural cemetery where it will bring her back to life. And it does. But now the sacred bond between life and death has been broken. I don't want to give away what happens next because it's a great book and you should definitely give it a read. At number 6, we have The Terror, the Dan Simmons novel that proves no matter how bad things get, they can always get worse. The book is a fictional telling of a real-life expedition. It was the expedition to find the Northwest Passage back in 1845. 2 massive ships set sail with a crew of 120 people. It was the HMS Ibris and the HMS Terror. In reality, the 2 ships set out on their expedition and were never seen again. To this day, it is unknown exactly what happened to them, but this book gives an extremely grim idea of what could have gone down. It has everything from being stuck in the frozen tundra of the Arctic in temperatures that would freeze your limbs off, stuck in that temperature for months, to supernatural creatures walking around and stalking them and tormenting them. There's people going insane, poisoning, and even the flashbacks, which are probably the happiest part of the book, are also depressing. If you want a compelling story that will leave you sad in your soul, then you have to pick this one up. It's a very good book. You should read it. At number 5, we have The Untitled Grimoires. This is one of the most mysterious books that has ever worked its way into the public eye. They were written by an unknown witch and scripted in a language that apparently only those who practice witchcraft can read. In fact, it said that you shouldn't even read it if you aren't someone who practices the dark arts, or it will bring death to you and everyone around you. Sounds pretty intense. Rumor says that the scriptures have been worked on through generations, with each time getting passed down they become more powerful. I don't know if I believe the whole hoopla, but someone out there clearly does, because when they were posted online for sale, they sold for over $13,000. I mean, that would be a lot of money to make off of some hoopla, that's for sure. At number 4, we have Silence of the Lambs. Hello, Clarice. You know that thing he does? A book about a super smart serial killer psychologist who is able to break out of prison, manipulate people, and also has a palate that loves the taste of human flesh. Wow, one extremely horrible serial killer packed into a book. Well, let's amp it up even more by throwing in another serial killer that likes to find women, put them in a hole in the ground for weeks at a time, make them put lotion on their skin to soften it up, and then kills them, skins them, and turns their moisturized skin into a nice suit. I think it's a dress actually, I'm not too sure. Yeah, after reading this book, you'll be walking through your home making sure all the doors and windows are locked and checking the news to see if anyone has gone missing in the last few weeks. At number 3, we have Misery. This is a book that will make anyone second guess getting famous. The book follows an author who gets into a brutal car accident and then wakes up in a woman's home. She is a huge fan and is nursing him back to health. Well, that's what it seems like until he learns that she is keeping him their prisoner. He tries to escape, he tries to drug her but continuously fails, and then when she realizes that he's trying to leave her, she cuts off his feet so he can't leave. Then he has to beat her to death with a typewriter so he can make it out a footless man. All because she was absolutely obsessed with him. Talk about abandonment issues. At number 2, we have the Codex Gigas. This book is said to be written by the devil himself. Now, even though this one sounds like it was pulled out of a movie, this is a real life scripture. The legend behind this book is more folklore than fact, but the most popular tale is that of a monk who was sentenced to death by the monastery. He didn't want to die, so he decided to make a deal. The monk promised the monastery that he would script the entire history of the monastery in one night. Halfway through the night, he saw that the task was actually impossible, so he prayed for help. But he didn't reach out to his loving God to come down and give him the answer. No, he went down below and he asked the Dark Lord to help him finish the book. The devil appeared before him and wrote the text. The scripture was written in a language that has never been decoded, and it is related to no known language. It also has pages that have full illustrations of what seems to be the devil. It's also said that the text is cursed and anyone who tries to decode the text will die. And I can't really think of something more traumatizing than death. At number 1 we have House of Leaves. I really wanted to put a real book that you can go out and get at the number 1 spot. This has been called one of the scariest books of all time. That is a crazy statement, and it really makes me want to read this book. That's right, I haven't read this book, but it was mentioned so many times online that I thought it would be stupid not to put it at the top of the list. And also I've heard tons of people rave about it. The book centers around a documentary crew following a family who lives in a rather strange home. The home is larger on the inside than it would seem ever possible from looking at the outside, in a way that defies the laws of physics. From there, the story twists and turns to keep you on your toes and completely unaware of what's happening next. But that isn't the part of the book that really sets it apart from the best horror novels ever written. It's the layout of the book that makes the book so unsettling. There are constant footnotes that reference fictional books and movies. There are pages that have mirrored words that force you to flip your book to read them. The narrators will shift in between different people and communicate with each other. There are pages that have just a few words written on them. This all combines in a way to make the reader second guess their own thoughts as if they were actually going insane. This unique approach to storytelling has given the book the reputation of genre defining. It is great. Go out and read it. I'm gonna read it after this for sure.
Right, this book seems to be a favourite amongst murderers. At number 10, we have The Catcher in the Rye, which you shouldn't read unless you want to go mad. Oddly, The Catcher in the Rye seemed to inspire two very high-profile shootings, the murder of John Lennon and the attempted murder of Ronald Reagan. John Lennon was shot dead on the 8th of December 1980 by Mark David Chapman. The lone gunman from Texas was found to be obsessed with J.D. Salinger's novel and was found calmly reading it on a curb nearby his attack on Lennon prior to his arrest. It seems he wrote his statement inside the novel too. He felt like if he carried out the assassination, he would become Holden Caulfield, the protagonist of the novel. 5 months later, on March the 30th, 1981, John Hinckley carried out an assassination attempt on the 40th President of the United States, Ronald Reagan. It seems that Hinckley's motivation was a weird attempt to win over actress Jodie Foster, whom he had an obsession with. When Hinckley was caught, he was found with a copy of none other than The Catcher in the Rye. Coming in at number 9, we have The Orphan's Story. This story was written by a Malaga monk between 1608 and 1615. Now it's about an orphan from Granada who travelled to the Spanish Empire to seek his fortune. For some reason, the transcript never made it to print, and everyone that seemed to be associated with it died. The manuscript was lost for centuries, some say hidden away because of the curse. Then a string of publishing attempts failed and people just started dying. The book, however, is to be finally published. Belinda Palacios, a Peruvian editor, said that she was regularly warned off the project because of the string of untimely deaths associated with the book. She said it's taken a while because the people who have worked on it died from one strange disease or in car accidents. I think that this is one book that I would steer clear of. Okay, this book may kill you, but not because of demons or devils, but because of cancer. Wait, a book that gives you cancer? Awful. That's right, coming in at number 8, we have Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451. When Bradbury's 1953 book about a dystopian future came out, the marketing team had a wise idea. The book is about a group of so-called firemen who burn down the homes and belongings of people who read illegal, non-state approved books. Wouldn't it be cool for the limited edition books to be fireproof? It sure would. The only issue was that people didn't know what was what in the 1950s, and the book was bound with asbestos. You know, the substance that gives you lung cancer. Not great. So while the book in itself is a bit of a scary read, the reality of the book is even scarier. Coming in at number 7, we have the Voynich manuscript. Who knows what is happening and what is contained within the text of the Voynich manuscript? The text is regularly alluded to as the world's most mysterious book. Written in the early 15th century, what the 240-page cryptic text actually says is still a mystery, and it has baffled humans for 600 years. It appears to be written in an unknown language and contains strange illustrations and diagrams. The book has been passed down from emperors and important members of society, eventually falling into the hands of a Polish book dealer. A 2006 book by Nicholas Pelling claims that the text is cursed. Others think that it was secretly dropped on Earth by aliens. There are hopes that Canadian computer scientists may have invented a machine that will be able to decode decode the enigmatic text. Who knows what we'll discover? Almost as intriguing as what the text said is who or what wrote it. We still don't know. Coming into number 6, we have the Codex Gigas. The Codex is a hefty old chap weighing 165 pounds, so more than me. The text heralds from the 12th century and is referred to as the Devil's Bible. Why? Well, according to the legend, the monk who wrote the text had broken his vow and was due to be walled to death. So what actually happens when somebody's walled to death? Well, it's a bit like being buried alive, but instead you're bricked up in a wall, like in a really small space until you run out of air and die in the wall. Really not ideal. In fact, I feel like it happens in an episode of Jonathan Creek, so if anyone watches that, shout out to you. Anyway, the night before his death, he wanted to create a book on all human knowledge, but he realized that, you know what, that's actually not a long time to write a book. He summoned Lucifer and asked him to finish it for him in exchange for his already damned soul. Apparently this is why there's a picture of the devil in the manuscript. But it's not just any picture, it's a 19-inch tall picture. So, a text written by the devil, surely no good can come from reading it. Coming into number 5, we have the Book of Soiga. The Book of Soiga is an early 16th century treatise on demonology written in Latin. There are only 2 copies of the book in the world, and one was possessed by Elizabethan scholar John Dee, who spent his life trying to interpret the text. Basically, the text is filled with spells and rituals, and it's kinda creepy. He had a pretty good grasp of what was happening, except for the final 36 pages, which he simply couldn't decipher. He and his trusted friend Edward Kelly summoned the spirit Uriel to tell them the meaning of the last pages. Now, the legend says that Uriel possessed Kelly and spoke through him. He claimed that the book came into existence when Adam entered paradise, and that it could only be properly interpreted by Archangel Michael himself. He also said that whoever does decipher the meaning of the final 36 pages will be destined to die 2.5 years after they do so. Coming into number 4, we have the prophecies of Nostradamus. Did Nostradamus curse us, or were his texts a warning? The 16th century French physician wrote a collection of 942 poetic prophecies, many of which have come true. A lot of people think that these quatrains were, like his grave, cursed. If he had the power to curse his grave, why wouldn't his poetry be cursed? Nostradamus famously prophesied the Great Fire of London, the death of King Henry II, the French Revolution, vaccination, the rise of Hitler, the atomic bombs, 9/11 and more. We just don't know what they are yet. Reading these texts may not curse you, but then again, knowledge of a terrible event without the ability to change the outcome must be a great curse indeed. Coming into number 3, we have the Great Omar. The Francis Sangorsky special edition of the Great Omar is for sure cursed. Not only was the original one of the most blinging books around, it seemed to be on the receiving end of some seriously bad juju. Emblazoned with gold leaf, gemstones, and peacock feathers, the original copy of the Great Omar sank on board the Titanic and is lost somewhere in the North Atlantic Ocean. Sangorsky then died just 6 weeks later as he drowned in an accident in the English Channel. A second copy was made by Stanley Bray, recreating the original. Now that copy was destroyed in the London Blitz. A third copy was then painstakingly recreated by Bray once again, who died just 5 years later. When asked about the book's tragic history, Bray said, "I'm not in the least bit superstitious, even though they do say that the peacock is a symbol of disaster, I'll say." Now the only surviving copy now lays in the British Library. Visit, if you dare. This isn't a book up next, but it is a poem which really is just kind of a short lyrical book. Now I'm not sure you're ready for this, but people who read this poem are doomed to die. In at number 2, we have Tamino's Hell. I know that all men must die and all of that, but Tamino's Hell is said to speed the process way up. The poem is a 1919 Japanese work of literature that is cursed, 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 and cursed again. It's supposed to cause death and tragedy if you read it aloud, so just don't do it. The poem tells the story of a young boy's damnation, his sickness as he vomits blood and travels to the blackest of hells. Lovely jubbly. It isn't just Japanese readers who need to be a bit worried. The poem has been translated into English. Now reading the poem is fine, feel free, even though it is kind of gross. What you don't want to do though is read it aloud in any language, unless, you know, well, just actually don't do it. Finally, finally at number 1 we have one of the most cursed and spooky books in the entire history of print. We have the Grand Grimoire. The Grand Grimoire is often referred to as the Gospel of Satan or the Red Dragon text, and it is a book of spells believed to possess insane powers, but beyond that it's said to be one of the most intense and potent occult books in existence. Written in the 16th century, the incantation book tells the reader how to summon the dead, and also how to summon powerful demons. Deeper sections of the book allegedly tell the reader how to do a deal with the devil. The book was said to be written by a man who was possessed by Satan. Now the original text is so dangerous that it is allegedly held in storage by the Vatican's secret archives. The book is so mysterious and famous that it is frequently referenced in pop culture.
Number 10. Codex Gigas. Right off the hop, this book is said to give the reader the ability to harness evil and negative energy, and it's often referred to as the Devil's Bible. Already into it, here we go folks. The book was first discovered in 1648 during the 30 Years' War. The Swedish army looted Prague, and amongst the haul was the Codex Gigas. Yeah, hard to miss this one. 36 inches tall, 20 inches wide, and 8.7 inches thick, coming in at 156 pounds. Yeah, it's a little thicker than Bernstein Bears. You're not gonna miss it. It's said that this book was actually written by a monk, but said monk had broken his spiritual vows. He was of course punished, but in a pretty extreme way, which is said to be sealed behind a wall and then left there for eternity to die. Just behind a wall forever. Right before his passing though, he realized he wouldn't be able to finish said book, which is then when he summoned Lucifer and asked him to complete the book for him because he was busy, you know, behind a wall and stuff. Yeah, like unemployed professors back then. The devil's like, I'll do that essay for you, no sweat, take a 5, brother, sell your soul, I got you, I'll script it. This book is filled with dark rituals, instructions on how to perform exorcisms, as well as a bunch of creepy drawings of the devil and other demons. Just for fun. Right now it's said that the book has 310 pages, but that once used to be 320. Those 10 pages that were ripped out were said to contain instructions on how someone could summon the devil, so hopefully whoever has those pages burn them, or I don't know, made a nice birthday card with them. That'd be fun. Number 9. The Book of the Sacred Magic of Abramelin the Mage. Little wordy in my opinion, but it's also a pretty good book. This book was of course created by Abramelin, who is in the title, who is indeed a mage, and he created this book as a gift for his son. Yeah, Lego wasn't a thing yet, and neither was fun, so he got him a magical book. Thanks, Dad. In the early 1900s, this book was translated into English, and that's when the rumors of the book being cursed began to spread, of course. I mean, this book contains spells, but also contains curses, so I feel like that rumor, it checks out, you know, people are talking for a reason. Abramelin believed that everybody had their own personal demon. The good thing about this book, however, is that it holds instructions on how to get your demons under control through rituals and spiritual situations. The kicker is that it's always risky to reach out to the spiritual world, so it's really not worth it, right? That's why everybody thinks this book is so cursed. Unless you absolutely know what you're doing, the contents of this book might just be too powerful for you, my friend. Those who have had bad experiences with the book explain either bad luck or hauntings from the spiritual world are waiting for those who read it, so yeah, stick with Arthur or Bernstein Bears, really, keep it cool. Number 8, the Book of Black Magic and Pacts. At first I thought this said Black Magic and Pets, and I got really excited for a hot moment. This book, written by A.E. Waite, is a guide on all things occult. It looks at lore, magic, occultist history, and of course ceremonies. There's certainly no issue with all this in itself in a book, but when this book is in the wrong hands, things can get a little dicey, especially considering this book has been referred to as one of the greatest overviews of occultism, and it includes a large number of magical spells from a variety of sources. Yeah, they all have spells in them. They're all like Harry Potter. They're all like the Chamber of Secrets, that book that he stabs with the tooth. They're all like that. They're all bad. The author of this book, A.E. Waite, is said to have been a British scholarly mystic as well as a poet, and it's said that he was quite a prolific writer on both the occult and esoteric matters. Nice, but he was an occult or two, but he was great with a pen. Number 7, the Munich Manual. Also referred to as the Necromancer's Manual, that's always fun. This grimoire comes to us from the 15th century and is a text that is largely focused on demonology and necromancy. Two things you want in a book. A lot of grimoires have both good and black magic, but this is one that focuses solely on the dark, bad side, know what I mean? Just in case you're a very specific demon, this book is for you. You won't believe number 4. Dive in, here you go. There are 3 different sections to this one. First section deals with the illusionist magic and spells that trick people into seeing things that aren't there. The next one is psychological magic, which is meant to use emotions, politics, and things like that in order to gain power over an individual. And if these two weren't scary enough, the third section is the divinatory spells, which is meant to allow the reader to see into the past, present, or future. Imagine seeing into the present What a waste that would be. You're just looking in a cauldron like, hey, that's me looking into the cauldron right now. It's like the game Portal, you're like, oh my god, it's crazy, it's so trippy. All sections are bad news in this book, but one of the most popular parts of said book is the part that includes instructions on how to make the Mirror of Lilith. We have our own Mirror of Lilith right here. I look into it every day. No spoilers, I'm only on season 27 of Life. Please don't tell me how I'm gonna pass. Thanks. Number 6, The Orphan Story. This book was originally written in the early 1600s, but it didn't end up getting published until 2018, because, you know, things take a while sometimes. We were a bit busy. The Orphan Story is about a 14-year-old Spanish boy who heads to the Americas, you know, a classic coming-of-age tale, a feel-good story, dare I say, until it isn't anymore. This is exactly the reason why it took so long for said book to be published. While the curse in this book doesn't come from the story itself, there's something that happens, there's something dark lurking in those pages, and people end up taking their own lives. It's horrible. The book's publisher, Belinda Palacios, who worked on the book for 2 years, explained that throughout those years, she was often warned of the cursed book and how every publisher who had tried to work on it before ended up passing away in a mysterious, tragic kind of way before they could finish the book. You know what I mean? Some Final Destination stuff would kind of happen here. Her research showed that those who tried to edit the book before either found themselves in horrible accidents or with strange illnesses, right? One of the two. Luckily, Belinda made it through the process unscathed for now, so let's just hope that maybe the curse has been lifted. Either way, I can't read, so I'm not gonna get there anytime soon. Number 5, The Grand Grimoire. This book is often referred to as the book with incredible powers, and it's been called one of the darkest books in the world, right next to Holes. Those two are tied right now. While the author of this book is still unknown, classic, the contents of it are things like black magic, dark spooky secrets, occult information, anything I just talked about, more of that. It's believed that the book was written sometime around 1521 and it's split into 2 books. Yeah, classic. He's like, ah, but wait, there's more. Tune in next week. $15. Give me it right now. Book 1 details instructions on how to summon a demon and how to get the demon to do your bidding, do your house chores, whatever you want. Maybe even answer some phone calls, sure. The second book is split into 2 parts and it details how to make a pact with the demon and how to command the spirit, but with less tools, which means that it's significantly more riskier than the first book. They're like, hey, you can do this, but it's gonna cost you. Come to this book. People fear the Grand Grimoire because they worry that if anyone reads it fully, then the devil will then enslave their soul. Okay, you said it. Returning that one. Next. Number 4, the Book of Soiga. Anything that is referred to as the Book of Death? Ho, count me in. I'll renew my library card right now. Let's do it. Let's amp it up. The Book of Soiga, this one's tough because nobody knows what language it's written in, right? So that's obviously a challenge. The beginning part of the book definitely contains some spells or incantations, and the ending of the book is really where the most mystery lies, and trying to decipher it is not that easy. It's said that a scholar called John Dee once attempted to decode the secret book, and it was so difficult that he needed to call on an angel, the angel Uriel, for help. Everyone's calling demons and angels for help. I'm like, can I do that? If I call in sick one day, can I call a demon? Is that, I don't know, we could do that. Even the angel didn't have the answers on this part, and he instructed John to call on the archangel, Michael, who would be the only one who was really able to interpret said text. After John Dee passed away in 1608, the book basically just vanished. No one knows where it went, but then, like magic, it just reappeared again in the 19th century. Despite this extremely interesting story and how it kind of draws you in, whoever is said to read the book will die 2.5 years later. So, is it worth it? Do we want to have 2 years left of our life for a book? If it's Avatar 2 and they're like, hey, you have 2 years to live after you see Avatar 2, I'd be like, okay, maybe. But this book, I'm like, nah, none of that, I'm good. Number 3, the Picatrix. This is a grimoire that is said to contain a large amount of magic that is presumed to be from the 11th century. The pages contain some philosophy, some astrology, some medieval science, stuff like that. And then there's things like recipes that involve mixing human and or animal blood. So it's one of those. Not so fun, and yeah, it's not so fun. Not a lot of pictures to color in, you know? The results are said to be magical, of course, but in reality, it's just a book on mixing horrible things together, like illicit substances and urine. Mix them together, put them in a cauldron. I'm like, no. How about that? Number 2, Sorrows of Young Werther. This is a book that came out in 1774 and it's said to have a large and negative impact on its readers right since its release. The book will summon your own inner demon, apparently. Right after this book came out, a huge wave of its readers ended up taking their own lives because of this strange and dark influence that this book had on those who read it. Young men would start trying to emulate the main character of the book by dressing like him, acting like him, that sort of thing. Not really shocking here. But the book ultimately led to horrifying actions, so in real life, these guys would also take their own lives. It was horrible. This actually led led to the book being banned in some countries because, well, it's not worth the risk. See, things like this make me curious, of course, but I don't think I'd ever want to read something that depressing anyways, you know what I mean? Number 1, the Lesser Key of Solomon. This one is said to contain spells that are used for summoning over 72 different demons. And just to spice it up a little bit, to this day, no one is exactly sure who wrote it. Yeah, it's still anonymous back there, penning it up. Could have been one of the 72 demons, who knows? The Lesser Key of Solomon is made up of a few different texts from somewhere around the 17th century. This book is said to be cursed, so even having a copy of it will cause the owner to experience constant bad luck or have the worst luck of all by, you know, passing away, biting the bullet. One person shared that the book violently just flew itself across the room at them, just like Interstellar. We just got a haunted bookshelf now to take care of. All because you bought a weird book at a garage sale. Know what I mean? While we aren't sure who wrote it, there are rumors or stories that suggest that it might have been King Solomon. It is said that perhaps he wrote it for his son and then asked him to bury it with him in his grave. When being prepared for burial, a group of Babylonian philosophers found said book, and this is when they were visited by an angel who told them to hide the book from the unworthy. Yeah, only the worthy can read this one. They then placed a spell on the book, which is meant to keep it away from getting into the wrong hands, and it's said to be how the book got its curse in the first place. So, if a friend lets you borrow Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, just ask them. Ask if it's cursed before, you know?
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have the Lesser Key of Solomon. This is a grimoire that is said to be cursed. It is said to contain spells that are used for summoning over 72 different demons, and just to add a little air of mystery, no one is exactly sure who wrote it. This is because the book is made up of a few different texts that have been compiled from somewhere around the 17th century. This book is said to be so cursed that even just having a copy of it will cause the owner to either experience constant bad luck or have the worst luck of all with passing away. People have shared their terrifying stories with the book, and they include the book's pages turning on their own, and another person shared that the book violently flew itself across the room at them. How terrifying would that be? While we aren't sure who wrote it, there are rumors or stories that suggest it might have been King Solomon. It is said that perhaps he wrote it for his son and then asked him to bury it with him in his grave. When being prepared for burial, a group of Babylonian philosophers found the book, and this is when they were visited by an angel who told them to hide the book from the unworthy. They then placed a spell on the book which was meant to keep it from getting into the wrong hands, and that is said to be how the book got its curse. In our number 9 spot today, we have the Untitled Grimoires. A witch's spellbook should never be messed with. I feel like that should be obvious, but I'll put that out there because apparently it isn't. The Untitled Grimoires are a set of handwritten spellbooks that were sold online for $14,000 in 2013. The books were written in the 1960s by a high priestess of Wicca who was the leader of a coven, and they detail things like spells, incantations, enchantments, and instructions on summoning spirits and demons. So, witch stuff. This is all fine and well unless you're sitting here thinking about how you don't believe. If you are a non-believer, it is best to stay as far away as possible from these books. The seller of the books warned that any non-believers who mess with the book will bring upon themselves a deadly curse, and on the first page of the book, the Wiccan herself wrote that proceeding with the book may have serious consequences. It reads, quote, "To those not of the craft, the reading of this book is forbidden. Proceed no further, or justice will exact a swift and terrible retribution, and you will surely suffer at the hand of the craft." That's a pretty sound warning, and one I probably wouldn't just roll the dice on. You know, just to be safe. In our number 8 spot today, we have The Sorrows of Young Werther. We've got a lot of books on this list that are said to contain magic and spells, and this one is a little different from the others on this list because it doesn't. This is a book that came out in 1774, and it is said to have had a large and negative impact on its readers since its release. Apparently, after this book came out, a huge wave of its readers ended up taking their own lives because of this strange and dark influence it had on those who read it. Young men would start trying to emulate the main character of the book by dressing like him, acting like him, that sort of thing, before following his horrifying actions in the book. This actually led to the book being banned in some countries, and for the most part, I'm pretty opposed to the banning of books, but I feel like this is one I can probably get behind. It is believed that even people who were in a completely fine headspace prior to reading the book would still be tempted to follow the dark path after reading it, which is exactly what has led people to believe that this book is cursed. In our number 7 spot today, we have The Picatrix. This is a grimoire that is said to contain a large amount of magic that is presumed to be from the 11th century. This text has long been considered pretty obscene because of the graphic content that exists within it. The pages contain some scholarly work with philosophy, astrology, and even some medieval science, which is actually pretty cool. But then there are things like recipes for concoctions that involve mixing human and animal blood, brains, urine, and other bodily fluids in with or other kinds of dangerous substances. The results are said to be magical, but I am far from convinced. This one definitely isn't the darkest or the spookiest on this list today, which is a nice refresher, and while some of what this book contains is definitely historically interesting, I think it's probably best to stay away from the magic and spells that lurk within. In our number 6 spot today, we have the Book of the Sacred Magic of Abramelin the Mage. This book was of course created by Abramelin, who was indeed a mage, and he created it as a gift for his son. At the time, his son was probably like, a book for my birthday? Thanks, I guess. Books are intimidating. Like, no one really liked Holes the first time they read it. Actually, that's a lie. That's still one of the best books I've ever read. But I bet his son was like Harry Potter with the Half-Blood Prince potions textbook, you know? At first you don't really know what to make of it, but that stuff comes in handy later. Anyway, in the early 1900s, this book was translated into English, and that is when the rumors of the book being cursed began to spread. I mean, this book contained spells, but it also contained curses, so I feel like that rumor likely makes a lot of sense. It is said that this rumor has to do with Abramelin's belief that everyone has their own personal demon. I'm just hoping that mine is cool and nice. The good thing about this book, however, is that it holds instructions on how to get your demon under control through rituals and supernatural situations, but then the kicker with this is that it is always exceptionally risky to reach out to the spirit world, so maybe that's why everyone was feeling like this book is cursed. It's looking like unless you absolutely know what you're doing, the contents of this book just might be too powerful. Those who have had bad experiences with the book explained either bad luck or hauntings from the spirit world are what await for those who dare to read it. In our number 5 spot today, we have the Book of Black Magic and Pacts. This book, written by A.E. Waite, is an exhaustive guide to all things occult. It looks at lore, magic, occultist history, and ceremonies. There's certainly no issue with this itself, but when in the wrong hands, things can certainly get a little dicey, especially considering this book has been referred to as one of the greatest overviews of occultism, and it includes a large number of magical spells from a variety of sources. This book is said to also contain rituals of transcendental magic and rituals of black magic. The author of this book, A.E. Waite, is said to have been a British scholarly mystic as well as a poet, and it is said that he was quite a prolific writer on both occult and esoteric matters. In our number 4 spot today, we have the Codex Gigas. This book is said to give the reader the ability to harness evil and negative energy, and is also often referred to as the Devil's Bible. This book was first discovered in 1648 and is massive at 36 inches tall, 20 inches wide, and 8.7 inches thick, and here's what's weird. It weighs 165 pounds. It is said that this book was actually written by a monk, but this monk had broken his spiritual vows. He was of course punished, but in a pretty extreme way, which was to be sealed behind a wall and then left there to die. Right before his passing, he realized he wouldn't be able to finish the book, which is when he then summoned Lucifer and asked him to complete it for him. If I knew you could do that, I would have summoned Lucifer to finish all my book reports in school. I guess I probably wouldn't have been cool with the whole selling your soul thing though. It is said that this book is filled with dark rituals, instructions on how to perform exorcisms, as well as a bunch of creepy drawings of the devil and other demons. Right now it is said that this book has 310 pages, but that it once used to have 320. The 10 pages that were ripped out were said to contain instructions on how someone could summon the devil, so hopefully whoever had those 10 pages destroyed them right away. In our number 3 spot today, we have the Grand Grimoire. This book is often referred to as the book with incredible power and has been called one of the darkest books in the world. While the author of this book is still unknown, the contents of it are things like black magic and dark, spooky secrets. It is believed that the book was written sometime around 1521, and it is split into 2 books. Book 1 details instructions on how to summon a demon and how to get the demon to do your bidding. The second book is split into 2 parts, and it details how to make a pact with a demon and how to command the spirit, but with less tools, which means it is significantly riskier than the instructions in the first book. Apparently in the book it even details how someone can call upon Lucifer or the devil, so I guess who needs those 10 missing pages in the Codex Gigas? Just go out and get the Grand Grimoire and you're right back in the devil summoning game, no worries. The book describes a few different demons, and it also gives spells that one can do for things like winning the lottery, love spells, becoming invisible, you know, magic stuff. While those spells certainly sound nice, magic like that always comes at a cost. People fear the Grand Grimoire because they worry that if anyone reads it fully, then the devil will enslave their soul. No thank you. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Book of Soiga. Anything that is referred to as the Book of Death is definitely one I'll most likely spend some time trying to stay away from. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but that is the least inviting thing I've ever heard in my life. If you don't agree with me on that sentiment, however, the tough thing with this one is that nobody knows exactly what language it is written in. The beginning part of the book definitely contains some spells and incantations. The ending of the book really is where the most mystery lies, and trying to decipher it is no easy task. It is said that a scholar named John Dee once attempted to decode the secret book, and it was so difficult that he needed to call on the angel Uriel for help. Even the angel didn't have the answers and instructed John to call on the archangel Michael, who would be the only one who was able to interpret the text. Here's where this mystery book gets more mysterious though. After John Dee passed away in 1608, the book basically just vanished and no one knew where it went, but then, like magic, it just reappears in the 19th century. Despite this extremely interesting story and how it kind of draws you in like you wish you could crack the code that this book holds, it's best to stay away from because it is said whoever is able to decipher the ending of this book will inevitably die 2.5 years later, so is it really worth it? You don't even get a cool phone call to give you a heads up either. No girl coming out of the well, you just get me telling you on the internet. This is the worst sequel to The Ring ever. In our number 1 spot today, we have the Munich Manual. Also referred to as the Necromancer's Manual, this grimoire comes to us from the 15th century and is a text that is largely focused on demonology and necromancy. A lot of grimoires have both good and dark magic, but this is one that focuses solely on the dark black magic. There are 3 different sections to this one. The first section deals with illusionist magic and spells that trick people into seeing things that aren't there. The next is psychological magic, which is meant to use emotion, politics, and things like that in order to gain power over another individual. And if these 2 weren't scary enough, the third section is divinatory spells, which are meant to allow the reader to see into the past, present, or future. One of the most well-known parts of this book is the part that includes instructions on how to make the Mirror of Lilith, which is for the purpose of divination we just talked about.